These are meant for educational purposes. Should not be construed as specific advice or recommendations. You know. Okay, anybody need more time? Okay, great. I'll end the poll and share results. Okay, let's see, and advance this slide here. Okay, first question, do you contribute at least enough to your 401k, et cetera, to get the max match from the employer? 5 out of 9. Okay, 5 out of 9 said yes, get the full match, but not the max contributions. But then everybody else was at least gets then the rest yes, do both, get the match and max out the contribution. So that's great. So that sadly, such a small percentage of people still actually get their full match across the U.S. It's really sad. Okay, number 2 question. If you don't max out the 401k, have you set up auto increase? And that's just an easy look. Nobody has that, but that's an easy way where you set up your allotments. You can add it. You can increase it 1% every year or every 6 months or something. And considering you get a raise, that's kind of where I don't spend all your raise. You know what I mean? Just pay yourself first. But okay, number 3, and that goes into this third question. Have you increased your investment savings into 2024? So that's great. The 3/4 have already. One person said no, and the other one, I don't know, get off of me. But the whole point of that is you should have a certain standard of living, but as you get raises, make sure you're putting some, ideally putting some away. I mean, don't keep raising your standard of living when not looking out for your future self. Do you have an IRA? Good. 5, over half have a Roth IRA. 1 has a traditional pre-tax. 1 has both, and 1 says, "What's an IRA?" If we want to talk later, an IRA is an individual retirement account. It's actually technically called an individual retirement arrangement. That's the word by the IRS, but it's an account you open yourself. It's an individual. So say you're a married couple, each person can have an IRA, and you can have both Roth and a traditional IRA. You can, but it's something everybody should have, and everybody should definitely have a Roth. There's a lot of 5-year rules. So even if you're over income limits, you should get a Roth and at least converts $1 into that to start this 5-year clock we'll go over later. I'm a fan of, in general, just the discount brokers, Schwab, Fidelity, and Vanguard. They're all good to open up your Roth IRA, and I think most should all open a traditional and a Roth IRA for multiple reasons, which we'll get into during the presentation. Okay, and that's why only 1 has both. Everybody should have both, in my opinion. Do you max out your IRA contributions annually? Half people do, almost half don't. Can't, since I don't have them. Yep, so half people do, half people don't. And that's happy to answer questions later, but it's, you can open up an IRA. You don't need to fund it right away, but you can open up an IRA in 5-10 minutes online. Probably 5 minutes, but and you could open up multiple accounts, a Roth IRA, traditional IRA, a brokerage account, have it all done, and then you at least get started. Then set up automatic investing, and you're golden. Okay. Have you max funded your IRA for 2024? Half have, and half have not. So you do have until tax day for IRAs, and when we have emergencies or things like that, like COVID, where the tax day gets pushed out, so does that allowance for contributions. When we talk about backdoor Roths, I'll explain how I like to do that, so that I minimize the number of times I have to go in and convert. But we'll talk more about that too. Let's see. Do you have an HSA, health savings account, with a high deductible health care plan? Half people do, half people don't. If you're retired military, you can't do that because you have TRICARE. It's not allowed. I tried. I was looking to, but it's not. I mean, I can't complain. So, but especially if you're young and you don't have a lot of medical issues, yeah, it's something I would definitely. It's the most powerful tax advantaged investing tool there is out there, and it's only 4% of the public that even has it use them. What I'd say is optimally. It's really something to consider, and we'll get into that. Here's the thing with an HSA: you can swap every year. Like say a family is about to have a baby, and they know they're going to have a lot of expenses medical that year. Then switch back to the PPO, where you don't have as many high deductibles, but then you can shift back to a high deductible plan and an HSA. You don't have to stay one or the other. So something that I don't think everybody realizes. And then if you have an HSA, do you spend the money or do you invest it? And good, most people actually invest all of it and use out of pocket money, which is the ideal way. That's the best way to use this. And then some, and that's the thing, some spend and invest the rest. The thing about this is the only downside of an HSA and the high deductible plan, in my opinion, is people don't go to the doctor as much. That's stupid. You don't sacrifice. It doesn't matter how much money you have if you don't have your health. So go to the doctor, but that is a downside that they've seen with people don't want to. Any questions? How's on the polls? Nope. Okay, we'll get on with it then. I've got too many slides, of course, but we'll get rolling through. Okay, the agenda. I'm going to talk quickly about the IRS did do updates for inherited IRAs, which could impact you. I'm not going to go. There's a lot in the weeds onto that. That's beyond the scope of Financial Fitness Friday, but we'll at least talk about it because it's worth a quick discussion since a lot of people will probably be in this situation soon. And then we'll go over the savings vehicles, how to get money out before the 59.5. And then kind of talking about taxes and lifetime tax management. Okay, first, I also put up some of these were back in 2022 updates to required. Anybody have any questions? Required minimum distributions. So most people, I'll hear it'll be 1960 or later. RMDs will start at age 75, and that's for traditional IRAs and 401ks that are pre-tax. You have to start taking out a portion that Uncle Sam wants their tax money. They've deferred it long enough, and they say, nope, you've got to pull out this much, based on the actuary tables. It's like 4-point-something% the first year, and then it keeps going. So when you get to that point, depending on how much you have, you're not in control of your taxes. You know what I mean? You have to pull that money out. When you pull that money out, that's income. And then you have to pay taxes on that. So they did lower the penalty, but I don't know if that's really good because nobody really got that 50% penalty. So now I'm afraid they're actually going to start penalizing people if you don't take your RMDs. But clearly important to take associated RMDs. Okay, and the good thing about this being at 75, that's 3 more years of Roth conversions before RMDs kick in. So you can move that traditional stuff, pre-tax money to Roth and have tax-free growth. And you could put, more into tax deferred right now if you're wanting to minimize your tax burden. Okay, another cool part of this cure is this: you can take a roll up to 35,000, a lifetime amount from a 529 to a Roth IRA. A lot of restrictions on this. It's got to be open at least 15 years. Yada yada yada. You can read all that stuff. But that is good because a lot of people are concerned, especially with like what's going to happen in the future. Is college worth it? The ROI? I know a lot of parents are wondering that. So this is a nice benefit of that as well. Any questions here? Okay, now we'll get into.
Alan,
yeah.
Are you sharing your screen? Because I don't see anything.
Does anybody else see it?
I see it. Yeah, I see it.
Interesting.
It might be one of those tabs at the top of Zoom. They changed
Okay,
it.
I got it. I got it. Sorry
Okay.
about that.
Nope. I just was want to make sure. Okay. Well, let me, Marcy, I'll back up. This is all I talked about quickly. This was RMDs pushed out till, for most everybody till age 75, and then you can roll the 529, 35,000, a lifetime amount into a Roth IRA, but number of restrictions as well. And then here's this, we'll get into so IRS just made these changes late July this year. And we'll talk about a couple of things. There's about inherited IRAs. And so the stretch IRA back before the Secure Act, someone that inherited an IRA could stretch this out for their entire lifetime. The Secure Act got rid of that for non-eligible designated beneficiaries, which we'll go into a slide that shows who that is. But that's anybody that's pretty much not a spouse or disabled person or within 10 years is, and like a kid, where you think of most of the time, that's where it's ultimately going to roll to. They suddenly have a 10-year rule. So you got to empty this IRA within 10 years. But hey, wait, do we have to do required minimum distributions every year? We have to pull out some each year. And it was very unclear. They finally came out, and that's the bottom line is it depends on the person, the owner of the IRA, the decedent who passed away. If they were already in the year where they were required beginning date, they had to start their required minimum distributions, then you have to take RMDs. If the person was not under the age of RMDs, you don't have to. The 10-year rule still applies. You still have to empty that money by 10 years, but you don't have to pull out a certain amount every year. Kind of stupid probably not to in many cases, because you want to, depending on it's a tax strategy. How do do you want to have this huge tax bomb on the 10th year, or do you want to space it out? But anyway, these are the different, I know it's not very super clear, but the types of designated beneficiaries. And then there's another set. It's a non-designated beneficiaries like charities or trusts that it could go to. But you see eligible designated beneficiaries, they can still stretch. Those are surviving spouses, disabled persons, chronically ill persons. It's what I said, less than 10 years younger than the decedent, minor children. But once they turn 18, the 10-year rule applies. So that's kind of interesting, a gotcha there. It only stretches for that long. And then who cares, like C2's trust. Hey, Liz, how's it going? But this is really more for the confusing part was for non-eligible designated beneficiaries, which are not most non-spouse beneficiaries. So say children, whatever, or people that are at least greater than 10 years younger, and then some trusts. But here's basically what they just the differentiation between when the decedent passed away before or after their required beginning date. As mentioned, if it happened prior to, you don't have to pull out every year, but you still got to empty it by the end of the 10th year. If the decedent died on or after their required beginning date, you've got the 10-year rule and the stretch rule, which we'll go into what that stretch rule, how that applies as well. Okay, here's the bluff, 10-year rule and the stretch. There's an RMD calculator too, but you can you can take the age of the beneficiary or the decedent in terms of the RMD, and that's based on actuarial tables. So if you're younger than the decedent, then you wouldn't have to pull out as much, because that fraction is going to be smaller, because it's going to have the same actuary, like when you're expected to pass away, but you still have to pull out within 10 years. So you might be able to pull out a little less each year by using the younger age, but you still ultimately have to empty it. And then for those people that already inherited one between 21 and 2024, hey, I didn't pull out anything. Well, they waived that. But the important thing is that clock started when they passed away. So you have to start taking in 2025 But if they pass away 2021, that's then 2022's year it starts. By 2032, that thing's got to be empty. Make sense? And I know I kind of moved through these pretty fast just to try to get through everything. So ask questions as they come. And then these are getting recorded and they'll be available afterwards with the recording and slide decks. Okay. And then eligible designated beneficiaries. Here's a couple of rules. They can, if the decedent died before required beginning date, they can use a stretch, so they can use their age or the decedent's age and stretch that out for their life. Or they can use a 10-year rule. They don't have to obviously do that. And then if they died after the required beginning date, they already happen to take RMDs, so they can stretch over the longer of the beneficiary, their decedent's life. So that comes into play. Say there's a huge age difference between the spouses. Yeah, that comes in significantly where the spouse, that's the living spouse, say is way younger. They can, pull out much smaller amount and spread that out throughout their life. Okay, now on to the actual topic, real. So these are what I think of the retirement investing vehicles, and I made up just different, what I thought of how I describe these ones, just different actual vehicles. And for the 401k, I consider that a dump truck because there's so much you can put in there compared to any other tax advantaged account. Then the health savings account, I call that, you show that as a fire truck, that it's there right now if you need it. But as I discussed in the poll, it's a quadruply tax advantaged account that if you can, you just want to save and invest that money and then pay for your stuff out of pocket. And you keep all your receipts, like throw them in a Google Drive, and then you can reimburse yourself 20, 30, 50 years later with that money that's compounded in the ASA. The IRA, that's the most flexible as far as I see it. That's why I consider it a sports utility vehicle. And then the brokerage account, I consider that one a tow truck because there's not real tax advantages to it, but you can pull that money out anytime. So money in your brokerage account, you can use that money, say you retired early before 59 and a half, you can use that money to pull you until actual retirement age where you can take out money from 401ks, IRAs, tax penalty free. And then Social Security, that's actually, for most people, that's actually probably their best pension that aren't, don't have one from the military or, state, federal government. I kind of cut it in off a little bit. Everybody's always concerned that Social Security is going to go away. I used to think that too when I was young, but there's just no way, I believe, because too many people depend on it. And there's levers they can pull to keep this going. And even if the trust fund, like they talk about, I think, what is it, 2032 or something, that's money's going away. Well, it's between 72 and 77% of the money that's paid into Social Security is by current employees. So that money is still coming in. Social Security isn't a savings account that tax is going and you pull that out later. Nope. Our money that's going in right now is paying for all the people on Social Security right now. So no matter what, that's why I shaved it off. If you want to say, okay, only 75% or something I'm going to get, okay, do that for your calculations. But I really don't believe it's going to go away. And it's inflation adjusted. So that's important. A lot of other pensions are not. Fortunately, the military is for those that are retired military. And that's significant when you think of retirement 30 plus years and inflation, even an inflation rate of 2.5%. That's a lot of loss of money after a while.
Does that mean that okay, well, a couple questions, sorry.
Yeah.
In 30 years, I've read articles that say that Social Security probably won't exist, or if it does, we probably will only get like a small amount of it. And will that money be adjusted then for inflation, or will it not be?
Well, I can't answer that, but I would still think these would be inflation adjusted as well, because but that and people that are already on it, in general, the government does not try. and people that are very close, so people that are, say, in their late like 50s, they shouldn't be concerned, because they're not going to make adjustments to people that are already dependent on it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But I really just, it could, like I said, it could take a haircut, definitely, but it can't go away, in my opinion. It's just, there's too many people that rely on it. It's sad that how many people rely on it, but that's why we do these, so that you don't rely on it.
And sorry, a little bit of an off-topic question, but in terms of Social Security, I think there's another benefit you get when you're like 65, which is Medicare. Is that right?
So Medicare is, and you pay into that. That's another tax.
Yeah.
That's actually your healthcare. Yes. And that's where your HSA stops. Actually, you cannot contribute to an HSA past 65, but you can use your HSA money to pay your Medicare premiums. So we'll get into that, but that's a tax based on your income as well. And so like, this is something for retired military. This is something that they don't explain well. Like, you hear healthcare for life, but it's not really. You get healthcare until 65, and then you're just like everybody else and have to pay their Medicare premiums. But you do have TRICARE for life, which is the supplement, Medicare supplement, which is probably the best Medicare supplement, but you still pay these large IRMA, premiums, which is way more significant than what we pay in TRICARE. So I just always thought that it wasn't ever explained very well. Okay. Any other questions, Will?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. And if some question comes up and you have a follow-on, please ask. Okay, so the 401k. How much can we contribute this year? Do you guys know? Out of our salary? It was on the poll. How much can you do from your salary?
Up to 23,000.
Yeah, I think
Good.
23,000.
23,000, and then the year you turn 50 and up, it's another catch up of 7,500, and then that's actually going up for ages 60 to 63. The 2025, that goes up $500, 20,300. Catch up's the same, 7,500, except for 60 to 63, it's 11,250 extra dollars. So I wish they actually did that for people 55 and over. If they're hurting at 60, they're hurting at 55 and could use better catch up, but I don't make the laws. So despite that, that's all we can, we can contribute 23,500, and then we can get, companies get a match, but look at the under that umbrella of the 401k, contributions are allowed up to $70,000. That's $1,000 from the previous year. And then that doesn't count the catch-up contributions of 7,500 or the 11,250 for 60 to 63. So how do you get that money in there? I mean, there's not everybody can, but if profit sharing is one way where companies can also do that. And then this goes into kind of the mega backdoor Roth, which is something that I wrote, and it's not in our plan yet, but guess what? It's coming finally for us. But and then if you have a side business like a solo 401k, you can use profits from that up to 25% of your profits and funnel that right into the 401k to help it, get up to that limit of 70,000, 77.5 thousand. And there's no income limits for contributions on the 401k. You can contribute Roth, pre-tax, or a combination, unlike the IRAs where there's income limits on both of them, actually, in a couple ways. We'll go into that. But now we'll quickly go into this mega backdoor Roth and discuss that. So in order to have a mega backdoor Roth, what we call it, is you have to already be able to max this out. But I've used an example of where we're at Viasat, they match 50 cents on the dollar up to a maximum of 5% match. So you have to contribute 10% to get the 5% match. So I use the example of somebody that could contribute the most, and they have to have a good salary. I mean, they'd have to have 235,000, to get that kind of match. But even if they got the max match, contribute, that'd be 35,250. That's still almost $35,000 available to contribute if they have that, additional. And then, but what you need is for a 401k plan to make it a mega backed or Roth, they have to allow for after-tax contributions. And then secondly, in-service distributions. So when that after-tax money goes in, after you've already tapped out the 23.5, it's not Roth or traditional. It's after tax, so there's basis there. So you're not going to pay tax on that money, but it would grow. And if as it grew and you invested, you'd have to pay taxes, except for unless they have in-service distributions. And that means taking that after-tax money and rolling it into the Roth portion of the 401k or a Roth IRA, preferable. In my Roth IRA, because then you have more control and less fees likely. We've been pushing this. They kind of gave me the Heisman for a couple of years when I asked about this, and so this group, we got a number of people together to keep kind of pinging our benefits, and sure, they finally agreed to it this last year, and they're just waiting on Empower to figure out the do the back end work, and they're expect a communication in Q1 of 2025, explaining how we'll have this kind of mega backdoor Roth at Viasat. So that's cool. And this, unlike the IRA, you have to contribute by the end of the year. Any questions on this? No questions on the mega backdoor Roth?
I want to say congratulations, Alan.
No, this is I'm glad they finally did. This is good for the whole company. In my opinion, this is good it also is good for recruiting and retention, I think, because not all companies do that. And there's, if somebody can't contribute 100 the max, well, hopefully their salary comes up and later they can contribute over. It's just, anyway, it's a great benefit to have. Okay, do you guys, so at least everybody here has already met their match. Has you guys ever found like free money, like month 20 on it, or like in your pocket, well, sadly, like use an example, if it's not as visible, the match on the 401k, but there was a number of people, even when we started these, that weren't contributing that 10% to get the max match. And so use an example of, if you had a salary, just say for easy numbers, 100K. So if you could only contribute 8%, that's $1,000 you just threw away. 6%, it's 2,000. That's $5,000 you just thrown away if you didn't contribute to the max match. So like I say, if you couldn't save 10%, maybe you need to figure out figure something out and change your lifestyle. The 401k, there's always these abilities to take loans on it, and I think it's a terrible idea in general. You stop losing that. You could say, oh, I'm only paying interest to myself. Well, you've lost all the gains that you'll get on that money while it's out. And the whole point is the reason pensions work is because you couldn't spend it early. So don't do it. That's what 401ks are for, is for retirement, not for a loan. So I just don't use other money to do that, in my opinion. I mean, people talk about leverage. Yes, I'm a fan of leverage to a point, but you're already leveraged when you buy a home and you only put, a certain percentage down. You're pretty well leveraged. So, okay. So anybody thinking about, taking a loan, let me know. I'll help.
Hey, Alan.
Yeah.
Question. So I've heard of people taking out some of their 401k to put towards a home.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a good idea, or?
I don't think it's a good idea. So, that's where I would use brokerage account money, or now we at least have for prior to, the inflation and interest rates going up, we couldn't get a return on savings, but even now you can get 4% or something. But I would, depending on your timeline for getting a house, depends on whether you put in the market or you go to something more conservative but get an interest rate. But I used like brokerage account, sold off some equities and use that as my down payment. And I don't like the idea of taking away from your retirement account, because then what happens if you lose your job? Instantly you have to pay that all back. Or actually then it's considered then you pay a penalty, because if you're under the age, you've taken out, it's considered a distribution. And you never know what's going to happen. I mean, so I don't think it's a good idea at all. Like, I just use money, save for your house elsewhere. That's my thought. I'm very opinionated though. That makes sense, Jensen?
Yeah, so you're saying that you would have to pay that money back if you were below a certain age, if you did take out the 401k and put towards a house?
So if you lost your job, it would be considered a distribution.
If you lost your job, yeah.
Yeah, and then then you pay a penalty if you're under 59 and a half. You pay a 10% penalty on all that. So to me, it's just not, you're losing the growth on that money, and you instead use other savings to pay for a down payment on a home. That's why I don't want everybody only to put into retirement accounts. I think you should have a mixture of 401k, IRA, brokerage account, and whatever, cash equivalent savings as well. So, hey, Marcy, we were just talking about, the question came up of, what if somebody wants to buy a house, should they take a loan on the 401k? And I basically said, I don't think it's a good idea at all. So use other savings to put a down payment on the house. That's what a brokerage account and savings is for, in my opinion. Okay, here's the age-related rules on, for a 401k. Oops, is there somebody? Like I said, I don't monitor chat well, so I just thought I can even. Whoa. Okay. Having trouble. What is this? Okay. Oh, that was just, yeah. Okay, so withdraw before 59 and a half. Generally, you pay income tax on pre-tax money and a 10% penalty. Stupid. That's just a waste, just throwing money away. There's a rule of, the cool thing, there's a rule of 55. So if you are at a company the year you turn 55 or later, but before 59 and a half, you can use the money in that 401k penalty free, like you're already 59 and a half. So that's something cool to know. And here's another idea. Let's say you started at a company at like 53. So you don't have that much in that 401k, right? Well, you could roll money from a prior 401k into that 401k, and then it's in that company's 401k, and all that money can be used. So just, some strategies, a little more advanced strategies that, people, if they don't have much in a brokerage account or other income coming in and they retire early. Required minimum distributions, we already talked about that. That's, for people before 1960, we'll start at 73 and then 75 for the rest. And then on 5-year rule on, so to take that money without a penalty, the earnings have to have been, you've had to have that for at least 5 years, that the account, before you can take it, and be 59 and a half. There's a whole sorts of Roth IRA rules, 5-year rules that are, it's kind of weird, but we can quickly go into that. But it's probably a little bit beyond the scope. I mean, we can talk, but I'd rather
There's also
yeah.
There's also Roth conversion ladders if you really need the money earlier, right?
But you still need 5 years. If you do Roth conversion, every conversion, you need 5 years before you can use that money tax and penalty free. So you need to start that early. Makes sense. And it would have to have runway to do that. And ultimately, like, that's all. I don't know if you guys, the mad scientist, he was kind of the godfather of that whole thing. But if you can spread out your buckets well, then you want to figure out how to use it, but you'd rather not use all your Roth tax-free growth money. That you want kind of growing as much as it can, if possible. But here, this example is just of, okay, how much, calculating, one, how much your retirement would be worth, and two, then we'll get into RMDs. But assuming somebody contributed, I just used 23,000, and I know not everybody does that for 30 years, and it takes a while before people can initially get there. But at 8% rate of return, that gives you 2.87 million. Then let's say you continue to grow at 4%. They go much more conservative. That's really low. I still think you could get, probably 5.5%, 6%. But just for simple, numbers, 4% for another 10 years before you have to do RMDs, that's 4.25 million. Here's the amount of the required minimum distribution when you're at 75. So that'd be 172.6K income. So that you have no choice but to take at least that much money out, then pay taxes on it. And then you see that as you get older, the denominator gets smaller, so the number keeps going out. So that's the whole thing about taxes and doing Roth conversions, and during the gap years when or one, having a decent portion in Roth already, but doing Roth conversions before you're required to do minimum distributions to get that pre-tax money bucket down to a reasonable rate so that your RMDs are not too high and your associated tax rate is also not too high.
Quick question. So
yep.
At the bottom, you're saying that RMDs are required for traditional 401ks and traditional IRAs. So does that mean your Roth IRA and Roth 401k aren't required?
Correct. Those can stay as long as you're alive. And then it grows into that 10-year rule I talked about as it's for inherited ones. But yeah, it used to, just until 2022, they used to have to take required minimum distributions on Roth 401ks, but that Secure 2.0 changed that. And so both Roth IRAs and Roth 401ks do not have any required minimum distributions.
Oh, so that's a benefit, right?
What?
That's a benefit then, right?
That's great. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because before that was an important reason to roll your Roth 401k into a Roth IRA so that you can control the distributions. But now you don't have to do that.
But that's only if you intend on saving it until you're 75 plus, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, you can spend it before. Absolutely.
Right.
But
okay.
Once you hit 75, you don't have a choice but to take out a certain percentage every year.
Right, because Uncle
Yep.
Sam wants his money.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. You're welcome. Okay. So what are your options? You leave the company. What can you do with your 401k, and what should you do? Don't everybody answer at once.
Roll it over.
Yeah, roll it over to the other 401k.
Okay, that's one thing. Yep. What else?
Roll it over to an IRA or Roth.
You could do that. It depends. And Will, if it's traditional, you don't want to roll it straight to a Roth. You want to roll it to a traditional IRA in that case.
Oh,
and
okay.
Then that way you control, because otherwise that whole thing gets converted to Roth and you pay taxes on all that money.
Oh, wow.
Year. So what else could you do?
Can
So if
you
you
keep it with
leave
your
it.
employer?
Yep.
Oh, keep it. Oh, yeah.
Good. Okay. You can leave it where it's at. That's like TSP. That's oftentimes the best thing to do for people in the military. Just leave it where it's at. Eventually, you probably want to consolidate these and and there's strategies like I mentioned, the rule of 55. You could use that if you don't have much in an employer account when you want to retire early from 55 on. You could roll it to a new 401k, and that kind of goes into what's a better plan. If the previous company had much cheaper, lower, expense ratios and things like that, probably just leave it there. If the new company you go to is expensive 401k and high admin fees, I wouldn't want to roll it in there. And then you could withdraw it and pay tax. No, don't do that. Yeah.
Hey, Alan, quick question. So, my girlfriend recently moved her money because she just changed jobs, right? So she moved her 401k to her new 401k, but she keeps getting checks from her old 401k, like for like 15 cents. Do you understand why that would happen?
That's that's weird. That's some stupid. I'd just have her call that 401k provider
Okay.
and say just ask. I don't know exactly what that is. That's such a small amount. I was like,
Yeah,
wait,
she keeps getting checks for like 15 cents, $1. It's really weird.
I know. I was trying to think of like some kind of interest she's getting, but I would just have her call that company and say, look, I rolled this.
Okay.
Find out what it is and see if you can, if there's for some reason something left there, just get it rolled to that other company's 401k.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, welcome. And one of the things about rolling it into an IRA is if you roll a lot of traditional 401k to a traditional IRA, that kind of screws you on the backdoor Roth if you are above the income limits, which we'll get into in a few, but I'll explain that. And if now we'll roll into the health savings account. As I mentioned, the fire truck, this one's the best tax advantage because you don't pay. It's like having the benefits of a traditional and a Roth, and if it comes out of your employer, your paycheck, you also don't pay FICA taxes. So it goes in tax free, grows tax deferred, and then if you use it on medical expenses, which is pretty much everything, it's tax free growth. So it's really an incredible investing account. And like I said, you can reimburse yourself 10, 20, 50 years later when that money's, compounded, doubled many times, and pay back those old receipts that you paid out of your pocket with. There's also for people that don't have an HSA, you can typically use a flexible spending account, and there's also a dependent flexible spending account for like healthcare, for like dependent, paying for childcare, things like that. But the FSA is use it or lose it. So that's something you got to figure out. How much am I likely going to spend this year on, medical stuff, medical, vision, dental, but that comes out tax free. It just sits there. And the cool thing about it though is, let's say like for us, our new plan starts May 1st of each year. That money, even though they pull out a little bit of money from each paycheck for the amount that you allotted for that year, if you had say you did the whole limit at 2025 of 3,300 and you had a bill of 3,300 May 2nd, you could pay that entire bill with your FSA, even though you've only put in a couple of dollars at this point. It still collects. So that's kind of a cool thing about the FSA. Also, if you have an HSA, you can do a limited use FSA and use that tax-free money on dental and vision, which pretty much insurance sucks a lot worse for dental and vision anyway. But you can use that tax-free money for some of the expenses instead of paying out after-tax money out of your checking account. Any questions there?
Sorry, just a quick question. So for HSA, you can only use it for medical expenses before a certain age, correct?
No, it's okay. So you want to use it always for medical stuff, and whenever you can't. If at 65, you could use it on things that aren't medical, but then you pay tax on the growth. So it's like a traditional IRA. So don't do it. Use it on medical. Everybody's going to have plenty of medical freaking expenses. That's that you can use that money on. Like I said, you can also pay your Medicare premiums with that money.
Yeah.
So don't blow that growth, in my opinion. And that's why the importance of saving those receipts, over your lifetime, because you can replay yourself that way.
And sorry, last question. So when you put money into your HSA, you have to pick the stocks that you want to invest in, correct?
Yeah, there's the different funds for, each company has a kind of a different thing. So yeah, you pick just kind of like the 401k, you pick what of what's
Okay.
available, what you want it in.
All right. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Hey, Alan.
Yeah.
So if you have an HSA account and you're not doing anything with it and you're just leaving it there, it doesn't grow or anything, right? It's just sits there.
Yeah, I'm not. That's something that since I can't have an HSA, I imagine there's probably just a cash account of maybe go into. Maybe it's kind of like money market, you get something, but that's something you need to go look at and make sure it's invested properly, so that you're getting a return. Because otherwise, yeah, that's the whole point of it, is invest it so that it grows, tax-free, deferred growth, and tax-free earnings.
And is there a certain amount or a certain time that you have to invest it, or can you just invest it immediately after
you can invest it
sign up?
immediately? Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And unfortunately, you can't, at least with our plan, I don't know if others, you can't, like, say, you see that limit of 4,300, you can't put that all in January 1st. It just comes out equally throughout the year. So, but whatever, it's still a great deal. Yeah, I remember Christian, he's not on anymore, but he was like, he wanted to, timing the market is better than timing the market, but whatever, it's still great. Okay, IRA. So this, like I said, this one's most flexible, and you've got more investing options. As mentioned, no RMDs, and will, since it was 2024, no RMDs on the Roth 401k. And you can contribute up to tax day of the following year. So, but you do have to have income to contribute, and a pension is not considered income when it comes to IRA income. Unfortunately, it counts for taxes, but not towards this. The other cool thing though is if you don't have income, a spouse can contribute, even if there's a non-working spouse. If, let's say this year, 7,000 per person. If the person makes at least the working spouse makes at least 14,000, both people could contribute the max of 7,000 into the IRA. If you contribute if you have a traditional and a Roth, you can't contribute 7 to each. It's 7,000 total in IRA contributions, whether you do traditional or Roth. I'm a big fan of Roth, and here's why. Look at these income limits. Okay, so that's the only thing that sucks, these income limits, especially in California, like Southern California, the Bay Area. That's not very much especially for married couples, for a Roth IRA. But the traditional IRA, this is the thing. If you have no employer plan, that's fine. That money's tax deductible. But if you have a 401k that you're contributing to an employer plan, look at how small those income limits are to make those tax deductible. So it's stupid to do that. Do the backdoor Roth in that case. And actually the Secure came out. They're also, the catch-up contributions are supposed to be indexed towards inflation. They didn't make any change this year. Well, I'm not sure why we had inflation, but those catch-up contributions of 1,000 are going to be indexed to inflation from now on. So, and then there's, like I said, there's ways around the income limit for the Roth IRA, and it's totally legal, the backdoor Roth. Okay, here's what a backdoor Roth IRA conversion is. Yep.
Sorry, about this is a question on a slide earlier, but if your spouse has an HSA, can you use their HSA money on your medical expense? Yep. Oh, you can. Okay.
Yes. Yep. Okay. Exactly. And you can same with the FSA. Like, you can use, the spouses can use each other's. The card doesn't. It's like a credit card. It's like a debit card. It doesn't care whose name's on the bill if you're married. Okay, so backdoor Roth IRA conversion. Here, so you contribute a non-deductible contribution to a traditional IRA. Don't do this. Actually, so scratch number 2. Michael Kitces, the big fat brain, and don't invest it. Just as soon as the money settles, convert it. Sorry, I need to change this slide again. So it takes about 2 days for the money to settle once you contribute, and then just it's in cash, immediately convert that to a Roth IRA and then invest it, and it grows tax-free forever. You don't pay any taxes because it's already after-tax money, right? This is just money that comes, you contribute from your paycheck, your checking account or whatever for your IRAs. And then you convert, just convert that whole traditional IRA to Roth IRA, tax-free goes forever. Keep that traditional IRA open. This you only do if you've got, you're above the income limits for the Roth IRA. If you're not above the income limits, just contribute directly to the Roth, because then it's contributions, which you could use immediately. You could pull out. I don't recommend it, but you can. Here's the thing, though. You have to have little or no money in the pre-tax IRAs. That's where, like I said, that you rolled a 401k into an IRA, this could screw you because of the pro rata rule. Now, if you have a bunch of money, pre-tax money, so on the left, there's I like the coffee and creamer analogy. So the coffee, it's pre-tax money. 93,000 you've got in this IRA, traditional IRA. Now you're like, I'm going to backdoor because I'm above the income limit. So you add this 7,000 of after-tax money right from your paycheck, and you're like, oh, I'm just going to convert 7,000 that I already paid the taxes on. It doesn't work that way. As soon as you put that money in, it's like coffee and a creamer. It all mixes together. And how the IRS sees it, you haven't paid taxes on 93% of that money. And so you try to roll 7,000, just 7,000 in, you're going to pay taxes on $7,000. So what do you do if you've got a lot of money in the traditional IRA? So what you can do, typically, if it's rolled from a 401k to an IRA, and you're at a new company that has a 401k, you can roll that into the new 401k, and then you've got no pre-tax money in your IRA, and you can do the backdoor Roth. That makes sense?
Oh, so you can go from 401k to trad IRA to 401k?
Yep.
Okay. Wish I knew that last year. Pay taxes on it.
So, and that's like, for me, the traditional IRA is just more of a holding account to do a conversion. But here's another way that you could get more Roth IRA. You'd have to be close to the income limits. But if you contributed more to the pre-tax 401k, and that drops your income, right? Because it drops your overall AGI, adjusted gross income. Now, if you drop that below what the Roth income limits are, you could contribute directly to a Roth. And then if you wanted, if your plan allows it, which a lot of 401ks do, you could convert some of that pre-tax money that you did to Roth, but it still won't, it still allows you to do the Roth IRA contribution. Not many people, it's a very limited option, but it is one other way. If you had too much in a traditional IRA. Okay. Let's see. Oh, we're running kind of out of time. Hopefully, if you guys have some time, keep going. There's different five-year rules associated with Roths. If you don't have a Roth IRA, open one and get $1 because you need to start the 5-year clocks on these. And there's differences between contributions, conversions, and earnings. Contributions to an IRA you can pull out immediately. Don't. You want that to grow, but if you had to, you could, penalty-free. But conversions take 5 years, earnings take 5 years, and then there's other rules, whether before or after 59.5, but we'll keep rolling. Okay, brokerage account. This is the tow truck, like I said, no age restrictions. You typically have better capital gains rates by, traditional IRA pre-tax money where you're paying income taxes. And anybody that has ESPP and RSUs, you already have a brokerage account if you didn't think you already did, because that's where it goes into. But this money you can use, this is what I was saying, using that for down payment on home, using that for money if you retire early to fund you until you can use the other money penalty free. Okay, some other employers. So if you work for the state or like nonprofit 501c3s. There's different entities, that where they have it's actually not it's a deferred savings program called the 457, but it's awesome. It's like 401k, and you can contribute the same amount, but there's no age requirements on pulling it out. So if you retired, you could use all that 457 money whenever you want, penalty free. So really cool for people to have that ability. I mean, think about it. If you basically double up your amount of tax advantage savings if you have the income that could support it. Okay, how do I get money out before 59 and a half? Whoops. The Roth conversion ladder, that's what mentioned earlier. So you take some money from a traditional IRA, convert it to Roth, wait 5 years, and then you can use that money penalty free. Because the conversions you can use penalty free. Unfortunately, when you pull out from a Roth IRA, you don't have to think about it. It pulls out contributions first, conversions next, and then earnings. So you don't have to think about like, oh, this $1,000 was earnings. No, it comes out in the way it was, in that order. So that's good. Rule of 55 we already talked about. If you retire from a company the year you turn 55 or later, you can pull that money out. You can use that money penalty free. And then 72T, the substantially equal periodic payments. I'm not a big fan of that because you're not really in control. You have to pull a certain amount annually each year for at least 5 years, or until 59 and a half when you can pull out regularly. But whichever is longer, but you don't really have control. And so what if the market takes a big downturn? That's not when you want to pull money out, right? But you don't have a choice. You got to pull out. So anyway, I'm not a fan of that, and that's why I think that's why we talk about buckets, and there's other ways to do it. Taxes. So too many times everybody's thinking about just this year's taxes, and that's not the way to look at it. Taxes are something that's it's a lifetime sport to pay as minimum taxes as possible. We're in essentially really low tax rates. Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was supposed to expire January 1st, 2026. Now, President-elect Trump's already said, no, that's not going away. And now that there's both Senate and, both Congress is red, it probably won't go away. So we'll see. But at some point, I think taxes will go back up because we just can't afford it. But then there's the RMDs, Social Security, and IRMA. And then here's the thing: if you're married, what if the spouse passed away? Suddenly, the next year, you're in single tax pay, and you could have that could be a huge tax bomb. So let's see. Here's like thoughts of like considering our tax brackets, how they're historically pretty low, and looking at the 24% tax bracket, and people need to do some Roth conversions because to avoid RMDs coming up. That's such a huge window where and you just have to look at avoiding. I wouldn't want to jump to the 32 because that's another 8% of taxes. But 22 to 24, that's 2%. That's not much. That adds almost you look married. That's 182, almost 183,000 extra dollars you could convert at that low, relatively low. Whereas the previous part of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, you see that all the tax rates were higher except for the 10%. So noticeable difference on what you pay. So it's time for conversions, or just put more in Roth before taxes change. Here's the tax rates for 2025. So they're updated just a little. The tax brackets, the tax rates are the same. The tax brackets have adjusted a little bit, and same with the deduction. Deduction went up like $400 to $1,500, 15,000, 30,000. And not many people are itemizing, so that's a different discussion. But if 10% of households itemize now with these large standard deductions, whereas prior it was at least 33%. Okay, here's another hidden tax. This is IRMA. This is the Medicare tax, what you pay in a premium based on your income 2 years prior. And you look at it, I mean, at the bottom line where I said your additional potential tax, that's assuming a married couple, because these are premiums per person. And, there's an additional, heck, Part D is drugs, prescriptions. Part B is what you have to pay just for Medicare coverage. There's C and D, not going to go into that, but most people pay always for B and D. And so that's like $13,000 almost of additional tax potentially. You have to be having a good income, but still, these are cliffs where you're suddenly paying a significant larger portion of premium. And talk to this is that Roth conversion ladder we were talking about, where roll over the 401k to the traditional IRA, convert a portion to Roth, wait 5 years, tax free for life. Here, and then you got to look at your tax, what income's coming in, what et cetera. Or if you don't have income coming in, I mean, you could contribute, convert a lot at a really low tax rate. And that's the whole point of this is figuring out, like, okay, when you're low income, go Roth it up. As your income gets high, you do pre-tax to avoid the highest tax brackets, and then do conversions during the gap years. The gap years being when you retire officially until RMDs and hopefully, and also Social Security, because that'll be additional income coming in. Hey, Veronica.
There.
Let's see. Okay. Here's another established residency. California taxes are so high. So put the 2025 tax bracket. Here's the tax brackets. And there's actually a 13.3% to over. It can get up to. It's an additional percentage added on for people that make over $1 million. But I put a few others where I know some people from different states. Virginia's. Arizona's is really low. I had a friend that was gonna come from Georgia, but he's not here. And then here's all the states that don't for military pensions. These are the states that don't tax your pension. The states in the left column, those all do not have a state tax. And then the rest, they're trying to they want retired military to go there for their economy. So there's a number of states that don't tax the military pension. We keep trying to push it through in California, but it hasn't went through yet. We'll see. I don't know. How much they're losing though by so many retirees moving out. That's what needs to get through to the lawmakers, that they could actually do better by having military retirees stay here and support the economy. And I just went through, if anybody wants to stop at any of these, let me know. Here's all the state income tax rates that you can see, and the different, I didn't break down every bracket, but you can see how they go.
Can you go back to California really quick?
Yeah. And California, that's California.
Oh, okay.
So I broke that down much more detail. And there's an additional percent on top of that if you make over $1 million. So that 12.2% becomes 13.3 bonus. I don't have that problem, unfortunately. But, okay, and let's see. And here's the last one. So, but these are, you can see, I mean, California is the worst. Here's the capital gains rates, which capital gains, these are the federal rates. So if you're on a sabbatical, or you just don't have any, you're retired, you could cash out a lot of, money, and not pay taxes on those capital gains up to, 48,350 this year. But there is an additional 3.8% tax that President Obama put in, and unfortunately, they don't have that inflation adjusted. So for married couples, AGI over 250K and single over 125K, you're going to pay an additional 3.8% tax on investment gains, basically. And what sucks is it's not inflation adjusted. So as salaries go up, this is just going to be a tax that hits more and more people, you know, as time goes on.
Hey, Alan. So
Yeah.
capital gain taxes depends on your income, right?
No, yeah, it does. It sits on top of your income. So you have whatever you make, like from your job, you know, your salary and stuff like that. And then that's whatever income you're at. So then capital gains sits on top of that. But so if your income was only 30K, you could have capital gains if you're single, another 18,350. The difference between this number, 48,350, and 30,000, you could sell off that much gain and not pay a cent of taxes on it. You sell 20,000, now you're going to pay tax 15% on that amount of total income that's above 48,350. So you're going to pay 15% tax on, you know, what's that? $1,700 roughly, you know.
Is it different? Is it different for real estate?
Real estate has its different rules. So, and depending on if you, it's capital gains, it's still, but there's benefits of if you own the property or lived in the property 2 of the last 5 years, there's a lot more to it, Dustin, on that. But if it's a primary residence that you lived 2 of the last 5 years as a single, you can waive $250,000 worth of capital gains. Married couples, $500,000 of capital gains. And then if you haven't lived that whole 2 years, you can have a fraction of that. Say you lived there only 18 months, you can take, you know, basically 75% of that gain, and it doesn't cost you anything. So there's a lot. They made a lot of benefits, and it kind of pisses me off. Like, there's a 1031 exchange you can do for also you can defer the gains, the taxes on gains if you buy a property within a certain short amount of time. There's a lot of different rules on that, Dustin. But there is some significant benefits to real estate, you know, capital gains, especially for primary residents, if you've lived there. And for the military, the active duty, if they sell a home, that 2 years instead of 2 of the last 5 years. So say they moved multiple duty stations and they haven't lived in the place for 10 years, that you can get up to 2 of the last 15 years if you live there, and you still get that same wave of capital gains, which is amazing. So it's something for people to consider when they're getting closer to retirement. Like if they don't want to have, you'd say they have multiple properties and they want to just get rid of, you know, a couple or one or something. That's a great way to save a lot of gain, save a lot of taxes. Any questions here?
Well,
Yeah. So the capital gains is only on the gain itself, right? Not on the principal.
Correct, because the principal is your cost basis, so it has to be whatever it went up at. So in this case, like, okay, let's say you buy a stock for, at the bottom, you see the example, you buy a stock for $10, and then you've got to hold it for at least a year and a day for it to be considered long-term capital gains. If it's short-term, if it's sold in less than a year, you're paying regular income tax rates.
Right.
But otherwise, so let's say you buy it $10, a year and a day later, you sell it for 15, you're going to pay capital gains taxes on that $5. The $10 is always yours.
Okay. Yeah.
And you've already paid tax on that.
so my parent,
That's outside of retirement accounts, though. That's like a brokerage account. Because if you have a 401k, that pre-tax money and that gains, all that stuff gets taxed at income tax rates, not capital gains. Make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. There's addition. I'm not going to get into there's another. It digs even deeper if you have company stock in a 401k, but that's I'm not. Well, we're already 15 minutes over. So okay, here's capital gains. Let me already kind of mention this. If you're in the 10 or 12% bracket, you won't pay any capital gains up to that amount of. And then if you're in the These other brackets, you'll pay 15% and then 20% plus the additional 3.8 tax. Thank you very much. Here's the taxes that don't have additional state tax on capital gains. Washington used to be one, but they changed. Now they jumped up to number 11. They don't have an income tax, but they tax now 7% on capital gains. That just changed in 2022, I believe. So,
Alan, this is regardless of your income, right?
what's regardless of your income?
Yeah, let's say in California, right?
No,
it's
no, no,
13.
no. Actually, that's all these. In general, most of these, if they have an income tax, it's really based on the income tax rate.
Well, I'm trying to figure out so my dad bought his house in his 30s, right? And
Yep.
now he's 70, and
Okay.
he has a lot of
Appreciation.
equity. Yeah. So if he goes to sell that house, what capital gains he's gonna get? Is it 13% in California, or is it plus something else?
It's gonna depend on his overall income for that year.
So he's retired.
So he's retired and he's been living there, right? Is he single or is he married?
Married.
Married. Okay, just married. So they're married. They sell it. They've got, since they've been there 2 years out of the last 5 years, they get waived. So let's say it went up $700,000. They don't have to pay taxes on $500,000 of that gain, because they've lived there 2 of the last 5 years as their primary residence.
But the percentage is still the same. It's 13.3.
And then it goes into how much did they make in income. So if they had no other money, now they'd have to go. Now let's go back to here. So now they've got 200,000, right? That gain 200,000.
Mm-hmm.
So now what bracket are they in? You look at it, they're in the 8%. Wait. Sorry, the 9.3%. So they would pay 9.3% on the capital gain from California.
Okay, I got you.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because it's not. Those are the highest capital gains rates in that other table that people would pay. In Washington, that's just what you pay. It's on gains. But the ones, because they don't have an income tax, but ones that typically do, these are the kind of what it goes up to as high as that, based on typically their income tax bracket in the state. Okay, let's see. Yeah, like I said, capital gains rate is, I guess I didn't need to go back. Forgot I had, is according to their ordinary income tax bracket. Social Security. So the increase this year for people drawing Social Security went up 2.5%. Same with military pensions, military disability, etc. The FICA rates are the same, but now every year, like I said, I don't think Social Security is going away, because it can't. So now your earnings, they tax up to your earnings up to 176,100 will get taxed. Get Social Security tax. Medicare, it continues to tax no matter how high your income is. Taking that portion, the 1.45%. California SDI tax used to be capped, not anymore. So that's additional tax if you make over a certain amount. It's unlimited what your income is. But this is one of the levers they can pull, is they could make that unlimited. Like, okay, you're paying Social Security tax. If you're making $1 million, they're going to tax 6.2% on that. There's levers they can pull and will pull. They just are, I don't know, people are afraid. Everybody's afraid of friggin' elections, instead of doing the right thing. My opinion.
But didn't Trump said no taxes on Social Security benefits?
Yeah, he's gonna say whatever he wants to say. I mean, we'll think about it. Like, we'll see about that. And that's kind of one that's like, why are people getting taxed? It's kind of a double tax, right? You've already paid Social Security tax, so why are you paying tax on that money that you paid into Social Security? But we'll see. I mean, he says all this stuff. Who knows what's gonna happen? So I don't believe that's gonna change, but we'll see. And it's only up to 80. It depends on how much income you have, because there's a couple of cutoffs. The max you get taxed on Social Security is 85% of that money. And then there's a smaller cliff at 50%. And then if you don't make much at all, if you're pretty much dependent on Social Security only, you won't get any tax on it. So there's already that. I mean, but so okay, here's what kind of this whole summing this stuff up. The buckets, like you want some in each. Not saying you need a third, and a third, but you want a decent amount in each bucket so that you have that tax flexibility throughout life. You want to make a large purchase? Well, you don't want to use a whole bunch of pre-tax money because you're going to pay taxes on all that money. So you might want to split that out if you're going to buy an RV or a home or something like that. But that's the whole thing about lifetime tax management is evaluating what you need each year, and each year might be different. You might spend a lot, on vacation, stuff like that, large purchases in a certain year. So consider that when you're figuring out which bucket you want to pull from. And that sadly, this is too often. It's getting much better now that Roths, people are using Roths, but Roths is relatively new. 1998 was when Roth IRA started, and most Roth 401ks didn't start till much later. I think military is 2013. So too many people have this huge bucket. All their money is in a traditional IRA, and all that money, anytime you pull that out, that's income. You have to pay taxes on. So that's where it goes into the whole point of, hey, doing Roth conversions. Maybe you push out Social Security so that that's not additional income that you're getting taxed on, and then do conversions so that you bring down that large, pre-tax bucket and increase your Roth tax-free bucket, tax-free growth bucket. So you're ultimately in control of your taxes once you hit RMD age. Any questions there? Okay, who can explain the rule of 72? Anyone?
Oh, is that like how long it takes to double your money?
Bingo. Yep. So what does that mean, Will?
I think I'm gonna butcher this, but I think it is like it takes if you know what? Skip it. I don't remember.
Okay, so let's use it. Well, rates of return are never an average. You know what I mean? Sometimes they're up, super high, sometimes low. Let's say you have an 8% rate of return on average. Now, if you have that now what you do is you take your rate of return and divide that into 72. So 8 into 72 is 9, right? So that money, if you didn't contribute anything else, would double in 9 years. If you're contributing, it obviously double as even faster, but that's the rule of 72. So the higher you get the higher return you can get, the faster it'll double. Don't go crazy, and too risky. And that's why as people get older, you get a little more conservative, so that you don't get hit with sequence of return risk where the market takes a big dip right when you need to sell equities that you can't recover from. So your rate of return will likely go down, as you get more, it should, as you get more conservative. But too many times, I think, and that's like those retirement, those life cycle funds, or, that's what I don't like about those, because I feel like to me, they go conservative too quick. And then you lose that last doubling, which is the most important, right? Like 100 to 200,000, okay, that's cool. 2 million to 4 million is much cooler. 4 million to 8 million, you don't want to miss that doubling. You know what I mean? So but you don't want to, if you've won the game, don't go crazy either. Be more conservative. And then this, like, people, I know we all want to take care of our children, etc., but you've got to take care of yourself first. There's
I am divorced, and I live in a van down by the river.
There's student loans, but you can't get loans for retirement. You don't want to be a burden on your kids or anything. So you got to take care of yourself first. You know what I mean? And then make sure you're doing what you can to contribute to taking care of your kids. Okay, here's just some homework for you guys. And this is around the new year. This is a time I think always to verify your beneficiaries on all your accounts. It's just a good thing, good thing to do annually. And then it determined the age FSA amount. That's something that's consider. I got Invisalign the other year, and orthodontics, they only do like 2,000 max lifetime of insurance payment and only 50%. So I knew that was going to be a big chunk of big bill. So that's something to think about. Like, are you going to buy contacts, pairs of glasses? Think about that, and you can kind of guesstimate what's a good FSA amount. And then there's always FSA stores where if you have extra money, you could buy like from prescription drugs, whatever, all sorts of stuff that you could spend the money on so you don't waste it. Any questions here? Okay. That's all I've got. Any questions, any go backs?
This was great, Alan. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thanks, Alan.
Thanks, Alan.
Bye.
Yeah, you're welcome. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
well.
Bye.